There is no off season. Mitchell Northam is here talking ACC basketball. Locked on Women's Basketball starts now.
You are Locked On Women's Basketball, your daily podcast on women's basketball. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome. You are Locked On Women's Basketball. I'm your host, Howard Megdal. I want to thank you for making us your first listen every day. Of course, you should subscribe, listen to us first every day by having these podcasts delivered. Mitch, do you know how much it costs to have those delivered to your podcast app every day?
I think it's free. Is that right?
It's free. So make sure you do it. Make sure you're following us at Locked On WBB on Twitter. Make sure you're reading everything our incredible staff at The Next is doing at thenexthoops.com. Over 100 reported pieces on women's basketball every single month. Every single month. It's $9 a month, $72 a year. It all goes towards supporting writers, editors, photographers. Make sure you are part of the solution to women's basketball coverage. We're going to be talking ACC today. ACC, you say, the season, it doesn't start till November. It ended in April. Why are we talking about the ACC? Well, there's a lot of reasons to talk about the ACC. Wake Forest has a coaching change. Jen Hoover was fired. We're going to talk about them. Talking about the new ACC head coaches who might fare the best. I have some theories. I'll bet Mitch does too. And transfers. Everyone's on the move all the time. And there's going to be some new look ACC teams. But Mitch, I want to start, if we can, with Wake Forest. And I know we were both surprised to see Jen Hoover fired, to see that change happen. Take me through, first of all, what you saw happen, and second of all, what you think it means.
Yeah, right. So Wake Forest fired Jen Hoover as its women's basketball coach on May 11th. And yeah, the immediate reaction, I think, from you, from me, from everyone I talked to was one of befuddlement, bewilderment. It was weird. It was strange. Jen Hoover is not only a Wake Forest alum, but she's one of the best Demon Deacon players ever. They made the NCAA tournament with her in 1988. She had been the head coach there for 10 years, took the Deeks back to the NCAA tournament finally last season in 2021. She also took Wake to, I think 3 WNITs, and she was the program's winningest coach. She's produced a handful of WNBA players. So it's fair to say that Wake Forest has been its most successful in women's basketball when Jen Hoover has been a part of the program. In 2021, they gave her a multi-year extension. And then all of a sudden, on May 11th, she gets fired. If you wanted to make the argument for Hoover to be dismissed, it's not that difficult. She was 49 and 118 in ACC play. That's not great. Wake never had a winning record in ACC play under her watch. That's not great. And they only finished a season with a record over 500 or better 3 times. Also not great. This past season, Wake was 16 and 17, but they won an ACC tournament game and they won a WNIT game. Really, the strange thing about this was the timing, right? I mentioned, again, this happened on May 11th, long after the coaching carousel stopped spinning. It also happened, according to multiple reports, at the ACC meetings in Florida. The AD, John Curry, said he made the decision after meeting with Hoover there one morning. The other kind of weird thing about this was Curry was incredibly complimentary of Hoover, not only in the press release announcing the firing, but also during his availability with the media. And then Wake Forest gave Hoover a platform to talk about being fired in their press release, which is something I'm not sure I've ever seen, at least from a Power 5 program, from an ACC program. And she said, I wrote it down here, I'm disappointed and deeply saddened to receive the news that I was terminated today without cause. Just that in a press release from the coach you just fired is just really interesting framing. And, I wonder if that was done to sort of hopefully, I guess, keep relationships open with Jen Hoover. So in short, the decision to dismiss her was not strange, but everything around it, the timing and the circumstances, very much is.
The legendary nature of her work at Wake Forest and her play at Wake Forest, like you said, suggests a need to keep somebody within the program. So I guess there's a positive about that. I do think it's interesting context you provide. And by the way, I would be remiss not to point out this is what Mitch does. He has a book out that you absolutely have to get called High School Basketball on Maryland's Eastern Shore, a Shore Hoops History. Make sure you pick it up. I was privileged to read it ahead of time, which was a real thrill for me because Mitch and I have worked together for a long time. So do not miss that. Available wherever books are sold. But again, that context really comes back to a program looking to move beyond just a question of perception. I feel like there's a larger women's basketball reality that is maybe being embraced here, hopefully is being embraced here, which
Mhm.
is to say that just having a name, checking off a box is not enough. There needs to be success. Do you have any indication that Wake Forest, who, I know on things like what they spend on assistant coaches historically, they've been below what you typically expect from a
Mhm.
Power Five, that maybe Wake Forest is looking to make a movement forward? And how much does their new hire contribute to that in your mind?
Yeah, I think for and the new coach, of course, is Megan Jebbia from American University. I
Right.
think for her to be successful, or for her to have a chance at being successful, they sort of have to make amends in some of those areas. I mean, like you said, Wake Forest is not an easy place to win at. It's not an easy place to recruit to, despite it being an ACC school. Admission standards are high. The facilities are okay, but they're not great. They're nothing you would really write home about. And yeah, from what I've told and from what I've heard as well, they have historically not paid their assistant coaches very well compared to other programs in the conference. Before Jen Hoover was hired, this was a job that Mike Peterson had, and he voluntarily left Wake Forest to go to North Texas. North Texas coaches don't really leave the ACC to go to a mid-major in Denton, Texas.
Not
So
typically.
yeah, so things have to change, I think, for Jebbia to be successful. I think we were all kind of curious as to who Wake might go after because of this timing. The coaching carousel had kind of stopped moving, and any coach looking to move up had probably already done so. I thought that Wake might try to go after a non-current head coach, but someone with
Mhm.
experience, like a Gail Gostencourse or something like that. But that was not the case. Um,
Melanie Malcolm would have been a really good hire for them too in that time, as far as I'm concerned.
Sure, yeah, and there's a lot of different candidates like that. I think some coaches eager to get back into the head coach's chair.
Hmm.
Um, but Jebbia comes from American University, where she was very successful. She had 5 seasons of 20 wins or more. She took American to 3 NCAA tournaments. She also seems to be really well respected in coaching circles. I
Hmm.
think Mike Tebow was quoted in her in the press release that Wake Forest had about her. I think he said they had a jackpot of a hire with her. The question is will her success from the Patriot League transition to the ACC, and can
Hmm.
she increase what the ceiling of Wake Forest, what their potential has been for the past 3 decades?
It is worth noting our Patriot League correspondent Todd Graklowski also raved about
Yes,
Jebbia. So, clearly the people who have seen her work believe that she's capable of doing it.
yeah. So yeah, I think that's the big question is, can this hire and can Wake Forest put her in a position to increase their ceiling? The past 3 decades, their ceiling was kind of what Jen Hoover was achieving, a
Mhm.
really good, a solid winning season every couple of years, a couple ACC tournament wins every so often, made the NCAA tournament finally, after 9 seasons. But yeah, I mean, that was kind of their ceiling. So, does John Curry believe that this hire will change that? Is he going to help her change that with resources, with improvements, with more salary for assistants? I think that's the big question here.
What is that ceiling? What do you think it should be? What do you think it is?
Well, I sort of believe that their ceiling was kind of what they were doing. I'm not really sure. I mean, it's going to be really hard for them to sort of break through and become a team that is like consistently competing for ACC championships.
Mhm.
So in Wake Forest's press release and during his availability, John Curry believes that they can do that. I think it's going to kind of be hard to break through. When we think about the power structure in the ACC, at the top you have your NC States and your Louisvilles and your Notre Dames, and North Carolina is right back up in there too now.
Yeah.
And Duke hired Kara Lawson, and her goal is to be right back up there. I think Wake has a much longer road to get to that top level. So we'll see. I think it's going to take a lot of work and a lot of time for Wake to get to that level. Is it impossible? No. Could Wake get to a level where they're making NCAA tournaments more often than once every 30 years? Sure. But it's going to be difficult, I think.
You talked about the work that has to be done. And what's interesting to me is that Sakara does not provide any sort of need to work all that hard. Sakara is a wellness company. It's anchored in food as in medicine, on a mission to nourish your body through the power of plants. Sakara brings you these ready to eat chef crafted breakfasts, lunches, and dinners. They help to boost your energy, support your digestion, curb your sugar cravings, and they get your skin glowing. I mean, glowing skin. That's something I've never experienced before. Plus, it's all delivered right to your door, ready to eat. Right now, Sakara is offering our listeners 20% off their first order when they go to sakara.com/lockedon20 or enter code lockedon20, LOCKEDON20 at checkout. That's Sakara, SAKARA.com/lockedon20 to get 20% off your first order. I definitely, I need to see what glowing skin is like. That sounds very interesting to me, very intriguing. So, we talk about Coach Jebbia, and obviously she's going to be one of the newcomers, but there are a bunch of turnover throughout the ACC. I have somebody who I think has the best chance to be the best coach next year in the ACC among the newcomers. Who is your number one?
Yeah. So yeah, the ACC is going to look different next season. Last year, we only had one new head coach in the conference, Von Reed taking over in the interim for Quentin Hillsman after he was
Mhm.
ousted. This year, yeah, Jebbia is one of four new coaches, along with Brooke Wyckoff, succeeding Sue at Florida State, Felicia Legic-Jack at Syracuse, and Amaka Ogua Hamilton at Virginia. That's a mouthful. They just call her Coach Mox, I think, for short.
Yeah.
All respect to her. I think personally, I'm really interested in what Felicia Legic-Jack is building at Syracuse. She brought over four transfers from Buffalo with her, including MAC Player of the Year Diaja Fair and MAC Freshman of the Year Georgia Woolley. This is something we've seen in football recently with the way the transfer portal is now and how players are eligible to play right away, sort of importing not only your coaching staff from your previous school to your new one, but players as well. And I think this is the first time I've really seen that to this degree in women's basketball. So I'm interested in that, how that works out. Legic-Jack she was a legend at Syracuse. I think people have long identified, as soon as Quentin Hillsman had one foot out the door, this made the most sense as the hire to make. She is Syracuse basketball. She knows that area well. Some of the hires that she's made were interesting. She hired, I think, a longtime high school coach from the area, in addition to bringing over her staff from Buffalo. She also added Asia Strong from Wichita State, Olivia Owens from Kentucky, Kyra Wood from Temple, and a couple high school recruits, including Lexi McNabb, who is the daughter of Donovan McNabb.
Mhm.
Syracuse folks will know him well, as will Philadelphia Eagles fans.
Indeed.
So, yeah, for the second straight season, the Syracuse roster is going to look completely different than the previous one. This one, for better reasons than the last time. And I think this roster has a chance to fare much better than last year as well. So I think if I were, kind of placing bets on which of the four new head coaches does the best in the first year, I think I'd go with Legic-Jack at Syracuse. I'm really interested to see how she does.
I agree 100%. There's something beautiful about the fact that she is new, it is new, but there is this continuity, this
Mhm.
return, to having this legend come back, to have the daughter of the legendary Donovan McNabb in tow as part of the program too. But even just and so that caught my eye too. Who she's hiring? She's hiring to have a leg up on local high school talent. She's looking to not make Syracuse merely regional but national by hiring people from throughout the country.
Indeed.
It feels as if she has had a plan in mind for a long time for how she would maximize what Syracuse can be, presumably a women's basketball power on par with what the men have been under Jim Boeheim for, my goodness, longer than I've been alive. So, that's what I think they can be. I'm fascinated to see how quickly they get there. But of course, when we talk about the different changes in the ACC, it goes beyond just the coaching. I mean, the transfer portal, it's changed everything up. And I mean, I guess I want to start with Sanaya Rivers to NC State, not just because an NC State alum happens to be the founder of Blue Lena, which is a company we're working with on audience expansion, and was very excited about Sanaya Rivers long before we got official word about Rivers coming. But how good can Rivers be right away for Wes Moore?
Yeah, I mean, I expect Rivers to start in the backcourt alongside Diamond Johnson. She's only a sophomore, but she's going to have 4 years of eligibility left. If she uses all that, we'll see. But with the COVID thing, or actually, I guess since Sanaya Rivers was a freshman last year, she only has 3 years of eligibility left, not
Mhm.
4. So I had to check myself there. I just assume everyone has more eligibility than they actually do now. She played a little bit, at South Carolina this past season during their championship run. I think she played about 13 minutes a night. But it's clear that playing time was a big reason why she transferred.
And I mean, why wouldn't Dawn Staley play her more? Did she have a lot of other talent? It's hard to fathom.
I believe she did. I think Dawn Staley had a really good team this year, and maybe just didn't have
How'd they
enough
finish
minutes to
anyway?
go around.
I'll have to look that up, how they finished.
Yeah, I think things turned out well for them. Well, I think Dawn Staley's got a bright future in this business.
It's up and coming.
But yeah, so Sanaya Rivers, she talked to her hometown newspaper in Wilmington, North Carolina, the Star News, and she told them that my decision came down to filling in spots. And state makes a lot of sense. They graduated 4 starters, and 2 of them were guards. She also had this relationship with Wes Moore from when she was one of the top recruits in her class in 2021. She was rated 3rd overall by ESPN.
Mhm.
She told the Star News that she basically chose NC State over North Carolina, which makes some sense because if you're looking at playing time, UNC returns most of all of its backcourt, aside from Carly Littlefield, unfortunately. But
Mhm.
David Kelly's back and Kennedy Todd Williams is back, and they're getting a freshman in Paulina Paris. So if Sanaya Rivers is looking to maximize her playing time, NC State is really the spot to do it. NC State lost a lot of players from graduation, last year from Kai Crutchfield, Raina Perez, Kayla Jones, Elisa Cunane. But I think the additions of Rivers and Mimi Collins from Maryland and River Baldwin from Florida State, combined with these increased roles for Diamond Johnson, Jakia Brown Turner, Jada Boyd, Camille Hobby, I think they'll be in position to defend their ACC crown. And I'm really looking forward to, what a junior Diamond Johnson looks like with more responsibility and playing time in NC State's offense. We saw what she did at Rutgers when she was a freshman. We
Mhm.
saw in spurts and moments and splashes at NC State what she could do. So with the all the car keys to the offense this year, that'll be interesting.
I will, to my dying day, wonder what would have happened in the Elite Eight if Diamond Johnson had played more than, what did she play, 18 minutes in that game
Yeah,
against UConn and
and
not
didn't
all
play
of it.
much in overtime. Yeah.
To my dying day, I will wonder about that. Philly's own Diamond Johnson going to be fascinating to see. And like you said, Paulina Paris, somebody we need to talk about UNC in just a minute. Anyone who goes out and wins a Bergen County, New Jersey championship, like Paulina Paris did with Saddle River Day School, is somebody who's going to be dangerous in the ACC. Could even challenge and do well in a conference as great as the Big East if she had so chosen. But in a smaller pond, still has a real opportunity, and I wish her a lot of luck. But before we get to that, betonline.net is your number one source for all your betting stats and sports info. Now, when I say all, I don't just mean MLB or the NHL. I mean, they had women's college basketball. They have the WNBA. They allow you to bet on men's and women's sports in equal measure, which is something that from a fairness, from an equity standpoint, made sense. Not to mention, it means you're not, as a betting company, leaving money on the table. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sports wagering information, live betting, even esports. So head to the website today, betonline.net, or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action. Bet online, where the game starts. So if you had been betting on whether I would make a New Jersey reference, I assume you would have bet in favor of it happening, despite the fact that the odds would have been overwhelmingly stacked in my favor.
Yes, despite there not being an ACC school in New Jersey, I would have bet that heavily.
It's fascinating. I cannot wait to see how much Rutgers changes their footprint. We could have a whole conversation alone about the fact that there was a Mabry at Coach Washington's press conference. The Mabrys were not a part of the previous administration at Rutgers. But anyway, that's another story for another time from a team that, quite frankly, ought to be in the Big East to this day as well. Uh,
Agreed.
the other transfers that I want to make sure we get to, we talked a little bit UNC. My big thing is Miami has one Cavender, right? They have one Cavender? No, or more than one Cavender. How many
I
Cavenders does Miami have?
I think that Miami got both Cavender.
Two Cavenders, the Cavender twin.
Yeah,
Yes, indeed. And so what does that mean to be able to have both of them being able to play at the ACC? I mean, we joke mid-major, obviously the ACC, kidding aside, is as good a conference as there is. Are the Cavenders ready to perform at that level from what you've seen?
I think so. I mean, I haven't watched a ton of Fresno State basketball
Hmm.
over the years, admittedly. But Halen Cavender was all Mountain West selection. I think the Mountain West Player of the Year. So I think she's certainly ready to make the leap. I think Hannah Cavender is more than capable of playing up there as well. I think Miami, I think the guard play was something that could have been a little bit better last season. I think both of them can help in that area. I think, Haley is probably, the one that will probably start. Hannah maybe providing you a little bit more depth of that position. But, Miami was a team that came on really, really strong last year, made that crazy run to the ACC tournament final. Beat Louisville in the ACC tournament on a crazy shot. I'm curious to see kind of how they fit into Miami and what positions Katie Meyer puts them in to succeed.
You and me both. I think it's going to be fascinating just across the board. And even Sam Brunelle going to UVA, Sam Brunelle, somebody out of high school, I thought the world of in terms of what you think she's capable of bringing. I think she has a chance at her best to be a number one option for a contending team. Do you think that overstates it, or do you think Sam Brunelle still has that ceiling?
I think she has that potential for sure. When I saw her at a freshman at Notre Dame, that was Muffet McGraw's last year there, and I thought, in a couple of years, this is going to be a player that the ACC is really going to have to reckon with.
Mhm.
She had a couple injuries at Notre Dame. I think maybe fell out of favor a little bit in terms of playing time with Nia Lively for one reason or another. So I think it's good for her to kind of get this reset. She gets to go back to her home state, to a program that is also getting a fresh start. And I think has, the chance to be really a solid building block for the foundation that Mox is trying to build there. I think this year, certainly, I think Sam Brunelle and Mir McLean, those are, as good as one or two options as you could ask for a rebuilding team in its first year. I'm interested to see kind of how she plays this year. New system, new offense, new everything. Really a fresh start for her.
We'll get to some more UNC talk in a future episode for sure. Uh, but I want to thank our listeners for making Locked On Women's Basketball your first listen every day. I just found something out. It's really interesting to me. There is apparently not only is there an NBA, a place where men can play professional basketball, but there was a player from UNC who went on to play in the NBA. There was this. Hold on, I'm just looking up. Michael Jordan. I don't know. Is that? Are you familiar? Have you heard anything about him?
That name rings a bell.
It's men's basketball. So NBA. Yeah, it's interesting. Well, a lot of teams are apparently looking for the next, again, Michael Jordan. And they're looking to do it in the NBA draft. So make sure you go check out our Locked On NBA Big Board. Host Raphael Barlow from NBA Draft Junkies and author of the NBA Big Board newsletter is joined by Richard Stamen, Sam Ferris, and Leif Thorne, giving fans an in-depth look into the NBA draft, mock draft, player rankings, and of course, Big Boards. It's free and available wherever you get podcasts. Apparently, the men's coach at UNC also played in the NBA, Hubert something. I don't know. I mean, it's just interesting. I think they've had a fair amount of success.
Yeah. And I think that guy, Hubert, what's his name? I think
Davis. Hubert Davis, right?
They went to the national championship this year. That was
interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, they had in college too. They had a men's national championship as well. Good to see things starting to even out a little bit. Thank you all for listening to Locked On Women's Basketball and my NBA foolishness at the end of each program. We will be back with you tomorrow with Natalie Heverin talking all things Atlanta 10, and then Missy Hydrick finishes up your week. Again, Mitchell Northam. Mitch, it's always great to see you. Buy his book. It's really good. Read everything he has to write about. And we look forward to having you back on the program again soon. We'll talk about UNC and their primary basketball program on the women's side.
Yeah, for sure. Courtney Banghart is building some good things there, I think.
She sure is. All right. Thank you, everyone, for listening. You have yourself a wonderful Wednesday.
You are Locked On Women's Basketball, your daily podcast on women's basketball. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.